This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast revisiting television sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. This week, Kolchak, the Night Stalker, episodes 13 and 14.
During World War II, close to this very spot, science bore a child that changed the course of human relations, and to this day threatens to end human history. It was called, innocuously enough, the Manhattan Project. And it grew into the terror we all have come to know as the hydrogen bomb. But this year, only a stone's throw from here, science delivered a new child.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast with the historical significance of the Manhattan Project. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Where'd you have your lunch? Saskatoon, Canada? Rare shout out to Saskatoon.
I know, big call at Saskatoon. I'm sure it was in the papers at the time.
Yeah. You know what I noticed? One thing that's annoying that Canadians do, and maybe it's just because of the way our country's populated, is if you ask someone in the States, where are you from? They'd say, Chicago, Illinois, or they'd say St. Louis, Missouri, or wherever it is. But you ask someone and they go, Ottawa, Canada. I'm like, it's not Ottawa, Canada. You're from Ottawa, Ontario. We never say the province. Did you notice that?
I've never... Do you mean inside of Canada?
Yeah, like if you're somewhere else, or you hear someone say where they're from, they always say Canada, as if that is like there's no regional differences. Outside of the country. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people don't know anything about Canada.
Right.
I think everyone's just like, well, you don't know where this is.
Right. Like Vancouver, Canada. I'm like, you can say BC.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be like, and where is that?
Right. It's to stop the secondary question.
Yeah. I don't want to answer any more questions about this topic.
Anyways, I don't know why that's irritating to me, but it is. Just add it to the list.
You just want Canada to have a bigger impact on the national stage.
Yeah. Give us a little respect. Come on, Saskatoon.
Get no respect. I can't remember if I've ever talked about this on the podcast or with you before, but I lived in Regina, Saskatchewan for a period of time.
Mm-hmm. And
while I was there on the popular television program Mad Men,
yeah.
No, there's more than one. They referenced Regina, Saskatchewan in the episode, and that was on the front page of the paper the next day.
Oh, was it? They went nuts?
They're like, did you hear they said our name on the TV?
Yeah. If there's one bit of Canadian culture is we love being noticed by Americans.
So much so. Well, Jordan, I guess before we get into this week's episode, I think you got a little fan fiction for us, right?
I do. I went looking this week, well, mostly yesterday, if I'm being honest, to look at different sort of fan fiction. And here's one thing. I couldn't find any slash fiction, and I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure
like
there's
Vincenzo and Kolchak kissing?
Yeah, I couldn't seem to find anything. So if anyone can find it, I'd love to read it. But I did go through, and one interesting thing, Luke, is there seems to be three sorts of Kolchak fans that write this fiction. And you have the people who love the original show.
Makes sense.
People who love the 2005 show.
Oh, I forgot there was that reboot. Right.
And people who love the comic book, because they'd write it and they'll be like, this is comic book continuity, or this is 2005 continuity. And I'm like, oh, wow, very specific. But I did find two stories that I think are not too long to read. And there's a lot of also people have written like addendums to episodes and stuff, or like this should happen in between the episode. They'd be like I wrote a 300-word story of like what Vincenzo was doing while Kolchak was out, like really weird little things. I didn't pick those.
I'll tell you what, I love that idea.
Yeah, but there's quite a bit of it. But I did find two stories, and I'll let you pick which one you'd rather hear, just based on the title. I'll tell you one. I've only very, very vaguely skimmed these. One I'm pretty sure is a little bit sexy, and one I'm pretty sure has an alien. So I don't want to tip your hand either way, but the titles to choose from are either Love Does Not Judge or Pain Most Human. Which, whatever, for me, that sounded like a Star Trek Next Generation sort of title, didn't it?
Pain Most Human?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's like a Data episode. It's either a Data episode or a Worf episode.
You know, it's been a long time since we've had a fan fiction reading, so this is very exciting for me.
I mean, I can't speak to the quality of these because, again, I haven't read them. So, as per usual, I apologize ahead of time. Any stumbles are because of the person's writing, not my reading ability.
I want to hear the sexy one. Let's go with Love
Love does not judge?
Imagine that's the alien one.
I don't think it is, but that would be good.
Imagine if the sexy one was Pain Most Human.
Okay. This person is named D Taker's Girls. Girls is spelled with a U. That's the writer of this story. Bear with me. And Luke, please stop me at any point if you need clarification or any notes along the way.
Great.
Carl Kolchak felt happier than he could ever really remember. This beautiful young Asian woman.
Oh no! Oh no!
I didn't know this. This beautiful young Asian woman actually loved him. Loved him. She smiled up at him. He eyes glowing in the, oh, this is gonna be bad. He eyes glowing in the darkness of the bar. He met her a few weeks ago in the same bar. Before they were both nearly killed by thugs who wanted her for healing powers. She could heal wounds and ease pain, both physical and emotional.
Oh, physical and emotional. That is very helpful.
Those are helpful, yes. If you had to choose, Luke, what would you choose, physical or emotional?
I mean, I'd probably go physical because it's probably a more marketable skill set, but emotional is what the world needs.
Okay, I agree with you, physical. I loved you from the second you walked into the bar. I could feel your pain, and I've never felt this kind of pain coming from a person. I want you to be happy, Carl. You deserve it, he smiled back at her. That's what she was saying, but anyways, it's just written weirdly. I love you too.
Also, let me ask you this, Jordan.
Yeah.
You could walk into any bar and sense if someone is in, like, drastic emotional pain. There's no way you're walking to the one in the most drastic emotional pain and be like, you're the one for me.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, you'd be like Deanna Troy, just like, oh, I'm overwhelmed by all the sadness at this bar.
Which one of these guys is the most chill? I'm going to go talk to him.
So he responds, I love you too. You made me so happy. He raised one hand, caressing her cheek. You're so sweet and kind and beautiful. It's the wrong you're. He leant down, placing a delicate kiss on her lips. They wrapped their arms around each other, and the kiss deepened. Carl had her back against the wall.
This is a public bar.
Well, here's also, let me just mention, in all the episodes we've seen of Kolchak, there's been not an ounce of sexuality, really, from him, right?
I will note, in the 2 TV movies, he almost always was paired with a woman who was like 10 to 20 years younger than him. That was his romantic lead, which I was glad they did away with in the TV show. So
Right.
This is a real throwback to those movies.
Right. Carl had her back pressed against the wall of the table they'd been sitting at, nearly grinding against her. She broke the kiss and tapped him on the shoulder.
Wait, imagine Darren McGavin grinding against someone.
We have an audience, she whispered. He turned slightly to see people were staring. He turned toward the front of the bar. Kolchak tipped his hat. Thank you. Next showings will be Friday and Saturday night. He could hear Yit giggle. I guess that's her name, Yit.
Yit.
Y-I-T-T. They walked outside into the blistering cold Chicago night. The snow was crunching under their feet as they walked down the street. It's too cold here during winter, she shivered. Carl pulled her against his chest as they walked. Where are we going? She asked, her voice muffled by his jacket. I don't know, should be comma. Your place? She looked up and shook her head no. I was brought to Chicago when I was a teenager and raised by nuns in a monastery. He looked down at her.
He looked down at her. Darren McGavin's like 4 feet tall.
Unrelated. The way this is written is they'll have one person talk, and instead of like he said or she said, it's the opposite person they have, like they refer to. So it's very confusing to read. Yes, and also she's apparently very short. I was brought to Chicago when I was a teenager and raised by nuns in a monastery. He looked down at her. So you don't have a home? She nodded. Oh, he said that. He was. Is that canon?
He was raised in a monastery?
That's apparently what
he
it's saying.
He wasn't brought to Chicago. He lived in Las Vegas.
Guess what? That's what this thing says. It's canon. So you don't have a home? She nodded. You're staying with me then. Again, the wrong you're. You're staying with me then. I have an apartment a few blocks from here. It's not much, but I call it home. They walked the 5 blocks to his apartment. He spoke as they stood in the hallway. Now, by the way, again, not canon. We will never see his home, I don't think.
I will say, that is, I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, when are we going to see Kolchak's place?
Never. It's never going to happen.
I think he is. I think this story should be rewritten because he does not have a home. I think that's true.
Now, it's a little messy, but I'll clean it up, she laughed. That's okay. I left the monastery for a while. It was living on the street. I won't. As she entered, she tripped over a small pile of undershirts. She looked down and around the small apartment. It's not that bad. I could have it clean in half a day. Yit sat down on the couch and Carl sat down beside her. They sat shoulder to shoulder on the small, worn couch. Suddenly, Kolchak was aware of a hand on his tight... On his tight?
It must be thigh.
It must be thigh. Okay, that makes more sense. Yit began slowly massaging his thigh. Okay, so it's a typo. Yit, he asked. She placed 2 fingers against his lips. Shh. I want to love you, Carl. You've had so much pain in your life. I want to show you love.
All right. I just got to say this right now. Carl has had next to no pain in his life.
No, he's pretty unflappable too, right? Like I don't think he carries trauma of episode to episode with him.
He does not feel like a tragic figure to me in any way, shape, or form.
So that's the end of the story.
Well, I hated it.
I hated it too. This isn't really a Carl Kolchak story, right? This is not a. I mean,
there's other than the fact he had some sort of supernatural power off the top, it really didn't come into play. This is a lot going on otherwise.
Well, there's a lot of. Obviously, there's some questionable at best material here, but that didn't even feel like Kolchak.
The closest it came was when he told everybody the next show is at like 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Anyways, you picked it.
Well, I'm sorry, everyone at home.
And Luke, let me just tell you, there's another one. There's another story called No Hope, and it's like a 300-word thing, and it's just Carl killing himself.
Let's do that one. Let's cut this one out and put that one in its
place. Anyways, and that's a little bit of fan fiction. Can you believe that wasn't published?
Remind me next time never to pick the sexy one. It was a huge mistake.
Yeah. Let me just tell you. Let me just read you the first sentence of the alien story that you didn't choose. It's all we're gonna read. The alien looked up at Carl Kolchak with one eye. That's it. That's the first sentence.
I really missed out. Fuck, I fucked up.
Anyway, maybe next time.
Well, let's get on with the show after that terrible digression.
Oh, that felt like it was like an hour.
I guess this is why we haven't done fanfiction in a while, eh?
Yeah, no one is clamoring for it.
Well, if you've survived that, we'll get to the episode now.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Primal Scream.
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 13, Primal Scream. Ancient cells discovered in the Arctic give rise to a carnivorous life form and a cover-up.
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't know why that's funny, because it is pretty much this episode. I don't know how you felt about this, because obviously we haven't spoken about it yet. I almost feel like every 2 episodes we watch, this is maybe being a little bit more general. One's pretty decent and one's not very good. I would argue this is the worst of the 2 that we're going to watch. And if only for how they structure this episode, because I think this show works the best when we have to figure out things with Carl. Like, there's some weird twists and turns, and it goes one direction, and then you think it's one thing, and then it changes, and you go, oh, that's interesting. This particular episode does none of that. From scene 1 what happens, and then we just have to watch for 50 minutes as we wait for Carl to catch up to where the viewer could have figured things out in scene 1. Like, scene 1 what happened. Cells have become like a caveman, and it's killing people. But then we have to watch him go through the motions, and rather boringly go through the motions, to figure out what this mystery is. Is that a fair point?
I think there's a reasonable assessment of these 2 episodes. And, like, this one is, I think, more in the line of just, like, we've seen it several times. I think, compared to last week's episodes, I felt both of these were a bit of a step up. But I don't think you're wrong. This is the most workmanlike and back to a formula.
That's a good way of saying it. This is a very workmanlike episode. And it feels like a mid-season filler episode. Like, it's like, yeah, we have a couple episodes to do. Let's just throw in a caveman.
Yeah, it fits. Like, it even opens with like a very typical opening on Kolchak, where the scientist comes back to his lab and is violently beat to death as a monkey man jumps out of a refrigerator.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Luke. This seemed to have the most like 1970s freeze frame action sequences.
Yeah,
I don't remember them doing that before.
We haven't seen it since, I think, the caveman, or not the caveman one. This is the caveman one. The Wolfman one.
Oh, did they do it then too?
I believe there was a good freeze frame of the Wolfman one.
Yeah, so it's like clearly like covering up not very good fight choreography, but sort of like we start with this scientist who's we get the voiceover that he's been gone at, I think it was a conference, so he's been gone for quite some time, comes back to his lab. And then while he's there, he hears something, and basically this ape-type man jumps in attack, and we kind of do a freeze frame. Yes. That's basically what we get in the first scene, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. And where does he work, Jordan?
Oh, I don't know where my note is. What was the place called?
Oceanic International Oil, otherwise known as OIO.
Yeah, that's right.
I love when they started calling it OIO episode.
Yeah, that's good.
At any rate, of course, Kolchak, then he, as I think is usual for these kinds of Kolchak episodes, he's there at the media scrum that happens at the crime scene every time. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, it's a little odd that this body's arm has been like completely torn off. I don't think you guys are telling me the full truth. And of course he sees like a broken sample container in the inside of the freezer unit, and like this sort of puts him off on the adventure of figuring out what exactly happened.
Mm-hmm. And I should say it's interesting that this weird juxtaposition of really terrible fight choreography, but mixed with them talking about how incredibly brutal the attack was, because the attacks are so clumsy and silly. And then, as we're going to learn in all these episodes, like this creature is supposed to be so scary and so powerful and so vicious that's ripping limbs off. But when you actually see the action, it's like a guy in a bear costume like pushing people.
I mean, always an issue Kolchak has. They want it to be more violent than they can, like, not even that they're like censor wise can do. Just I think they're like not capable of getting any better.
Yeah. So, but yes, you're right. He's sort of suspicious, which sets us off. But again, the information, everything you need in the episode's already there. It's a scientist working on, like within a scene, I think we find out that.
Yeah, well, what happens is he goes to visit he gets to meet with the public relations VP of OIO.
Yeah.
And this is where this guy kind of explains that like the doctor is one of two people who works at the oil company's biology division. And they study
core samples.
Like they're like not the first people to get it, but eventually the core samples they take from the North American Arctic, come back to them. They have a look and see if there's anything interesting biologically in them. And in these particular cases, they found material that can be millions of years old, as he's saying. So he's just like, it's couldn't have been anything too crazy, because like he was at a conference the last few weeks, and before he went to that conference, his assistant was in a car accident, so she's been out of the office for a few weeks. So like no one's been in that office for weeks.
At this point, I was kind of hoping what might actually happen. It was kind of like a bit of a Thing sort of episode where it's going to get contained, and it's going to be something that they, in this incomprehensible thing that's taking over and stuff, which you've seen a million times. And the reason you've seen it a million times is it's fun. Yeah. And especially when you know characters, it's fun to watch them in those sort of scenarios and judge each other.
No, and this is kind of it. This is very funny because even like this, like the idea of Kolchak having to investigate an oil company in the set, like that's a great start off premise, but it really goes nowhere. It's like this basic setup is just to get them this missing link, basically.
Yeah.
And like Kolchak, of course, goes to the hospital where that woman was injured, and like does something we've seen a million times. He sneaks into her room by helping someone with a big plant so he can hide.
Yeah.
All of this is very much things we've seen before. The woman there explains that he's just like, yeah, there's the core samples we were looking at before we all like got hit by cars or went to the conference. It was full of cells, and we thought the cells were dead, but they came to life and started reproducing. So we put them in the freezer to stop them from reproducing. Yeah. But as we'll learn, the freezer broke down while they were gone, and that's...
Yeah, I love that the freezer in a medical lab that's dealing with very sensitive and valuable materials doesn't have some sort of backup system like, a hospital does. I was just like, okay, I know you need it for the episode, but it's just funny that they didn't have any sort of real reason for that, whereas they needed to get the doctor you're talking about, the one in the hospital, they needed to get her away because you needed no one to be there when the fridge broke down. So the guy that gets killed obviously can't be there, so they have to have the other doctor away. So they're like, oh yeah, she was in a car accident. They wrote that away, but they couldn't figure out anything else for the fridge.
I know, it's very fun. I mean, that's what the VP of Public Relations, which is such a weird person for him to have to talk to, is he explains, like, we don't really put a lot of stock into our biology department, so we don't, like, there's only two people who work there. So I guess they just don't check up on it very much.
Yeah.
Of course, this monkey man is on the loose, and we'll see him kill again.
Let's call him Monkey Man.
This is my favorite kill of the entire episode, is, like, there's this whole, like, Carl monologue about... This photographer got home from work and he put on the television to watch a TV show, but he didn't know the entertainment he was going to get. That's not quite what he says, but that's the Kolchak monologue. And this guy's just standing there with a big window behind his apartment, and just a full monkey man just leaps through the window, and we freeze frame. It's like, he's dead, I guess.
Is that great 1970s kind of like sugar glass that just like, it doesn't quite look right, and the action's this freeze frame. This episode is bad in a show that doesn't do action very well. Like, this one's particularly bad, and it's unintentionally funny.
I will tell you right now, because we're going to see this monkey man break glass constantly through this episode. And I will say, I realized something I really like in these shows is the action's always a little better to me if someone gets thrown through a window. There's just something about it that's exciting and stupid. And like, I'm just realizing that one thing Kolchak's really good at is people get tossed through windows
constantly.
All the time.
One thing I noticed, Luke, was they mentioned how young the reporter is. I think they said he was like 27 or something like that. And I mean, we're not telling tales out of school, but neither you or I are 27. And I looked at the guy, and I know it's that thing where you just see from like other time periods. I'm like, this guy looks like 20 years older than me. How is he 27?
You look back, and these people who are like, they're like, Abe Vigoda was 30 when he shot this. He's like, he looks 75.
I know, that's what it was like. I was like, that guy's 27? Anyway.
I was actually... someone, I think it was maybe Steve Chupek on Twitter perhaps, even sent me like a photo of or like a link to Darren McGavin had been in a what's it called, Mike Hammer. Do you know Mike Hammer, the detective? It's like a series of detective novels, and then Stacy Keach played him in the 70s.
Oh, okay, yeah. Stacy Keach, nice.
But apparently Carl Kolchak or Darren McGavin did it in the 50s.
Oh.
A whole series as the detective in the 50s. 1958 to 1974. Doesn't age one iota.
Yeah, I know. It's that like Steve McQueen thing where you're like, was he 40 his entire life?
It's crazy. It's crazy to me. Anyway, moving on. We can talk about how old everyone is forever. Kolchak, he goes to this crime scene, and like, this is one thing I kind of liked about it is like when he gets there, the cops have arrived. They've shot and killed the monkey man. So they've killed the monkey man. The monkey man is now dead. And like one of the neighbors is just like, yeah, I saw the body. Like, it looked exactly like a gorilla, but I don't know, kind of weird from the side. So maybe like a monkey man. But something I liked is usually up till now, all these Kolchak villains are usually unstoppable murder machines. They can't be killed by bullets. But I did like halfway through this episode, the police have shot and killed the monkey man. And I was just like, oh, that's unusual for the show.
It's funny you say that because I hadn't really put that together. But in my head, I was like, oh, I think the cops are lying because I just assumed you couldn't shoot and kill him.
No, and I mean, I know why you think that, because there's going to be more monkey men in the episode, just because they have to keep the episode going. But it was just the one thing I'm just like, oh, how unusual. They've actually done something.
Oh, and I should say the captain in this episode, I only recognize the actor. I don't know what his name is, but I only recognize him because he plays Jack Walsh in The Godfather.
Oh,
and
really?
He's the guy who gets the horse in the bed. He's that guy. So, and his voice is just so ingrained in my head from seeing that movie so many times that every scene he was on, I was just like, it's that old Jack Walsh.
Anyway, I think what is a weird scene in this episode, but might have ended up being one of the ones I liked the most of it, is Kolchak returns to OIO. Kind of, he wants to go see that VP of PR again to like, really be like, the monkey man was killed. What's really going on in the biology department? But it's a fun scene because he goes, and it's that classic scene where you show up and the assistant won't let you in the office. He says, like, he doesn't have time for you. There's no time. And Kolchak's like, well, I'll make time for him. And Kolchak like walks past her and like throws open the doors, and like the room is empty. And she's like, yeah, I told you he's not here.
Yeah, it was funny because it is that thing where like, I'm going to push my way through and make a point. And it's like, there's no point to make.
Yeah, that was a nicely executed scene. It got a little weird, and this is something they've been doing in the last few episodes.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Where Kolchak, like, he now just decides he's going to, like, harass this assistant a little. He's not going to leave. He's going to stand over top of her as she does her job, like answering calls, taking calls. And he starts, like, sniffing her hair and being a real weirdo.
There was a point where I wasn't sure, and Luke, you tell me what you think. She stands up at some point, and he kind of makes like a weird look. And I didn't know if he was like leering at her or if it was because she was so much taller than him.
Well, that's just the turn. Is he goes over and he kind of really looms over her, and he's trying to be really imposing, but I don't know for what reason. This woman's just doing her job, and like the guy's not here, and like sniffs her hair, and the woman's like clearly like off put.
By the way,
this
have you
man.
ever just sniffed someone's hair?
No, never.
No, me neither. Who does that?
It's insane. But it was a turn at the end of this that I kind of liked, is that like what happens is she then turns around and she looks at him and she stands up out of her chair, and she is taller than Kolchak. Mm-hmm. She's a taller person than Kolchak, and Kolchak is immediately cowed. Like he immediately cowers in front of her, and it's just like, oh, you're so much bigger than me. I guess I should go.
Yeah, it's weird. But there's also I think only maybe the second time where we've had him like he kind of checks her out or something. Like it's a little bit weird. And I don't know if it's just the weird pyrodynamics between a man and woman or what it's supposed to be.
I think when he's put at the end, because she stands up and they shoot it from that very conspicuous, like high angle, low angle to put him. And I think the idea is like when he does like look up and down her, I think he's realizing he's outclassed, like he's going to get beaten up. I think what they're trying to do is do a joke, which is weird to do with your lead character, to be like, he's being a creep, and then she stands up to him and he's afraid of her, like, because creeps are like chickens. And I'm like, it's a funny gag, but so weird to do with your lead character.
Yeah. Anyways, hey, no, I should say, and is it now? It's around here where we get a scene where he goes back to the office, and Ron, for one of the very few times, gets a real scene.
Oh no! This episode is like, I think you're right in a lot of ways. It's so weird. Like, he'll leave her office and he'll go back down to the biology lab where the police are now back again because someone else has smashed a window. And what we're gonna learn is like another monkey man has snuck out of the fucking lab. Yeah. They're just growing monkey men in this unplugged refrigerator.
Yeah. Although I think the highlight of this episode is in a few scenes later down the line, Kolchak's going to go back for like the third or fourth time to this lab, and there's going to be a container open that had clearly some sort of cells in it, and it almost looked like is like an uncooked chicken in the container, and it's supposed to clearly represent these.
It's like an embryo, I think they said.
Yes, and it's quite large and it's growing, and it is the best visuals on this episode because it's gross looking.
Oh yeah, that was great. I know. Well, that's the thing. They just keeps going back to this lab, and there's just more and more monkey. No one's plugged the fridge back in.
That's true. No one has. They're like, that was a problem anyway.
It's not like the oil company's releasing these monkeys on purpose. They literally just haven't plugged that fridge back in. So all these core samples are just spawning monkey men.
Luke, you describing it is so much better than the actual episode is.
Well, and this is and this is kind of the only fun that was in this. It was like, this next monkey man's free. It goes and finds this. There's just a truck delivering like huge slabs of meat, like, the kind you'd punch if you were a boxer.
That's right.
And
which is, by the way, that's terrible. That's just asking for trouble for monkey men. Just having those pieces of meat just hanging.
That monkey's just hungry, and it goes in there, and all we hear is like a little like ooh ah ah, and then what we see is the driver of the truck get thrown through another window.
But again, you're mentioning it's funny because everyone kind of goes through the window like a serialized Superman. Like everyone's just Supermaning right through that window. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And Kolchak, of course, hears about a report on the radio. He heads there. He gets there in time to see the monkey man running away. I think he tries to get a photo. But like that cop, the one with the horse head in his bed, he sees it and he grabs Kolchak's camera and like stomps it to bits.
Yeah, that's right. And then Annie's like, "Oh, did I break your camera?" Like classic, like Kolchak and their theme of police corruption is quite strong.
Although this time Kolchak's just like, he's not going to take it, so he goes to the police station and he's just
to file a report.
Yeah, I'm going to file a report. You smashed my camera. And when the cop's a little bit like snarky with him, he's like, "All right, well, I'm going to break into your office and steal the autopsy photos of that first monkey man you shot then."
Yeah, which again, I like all these elements on their own. I like the idea of Carl breaking into getting files. I like the idea of him going to interview people in the hospital and going to the lab and finding stuff. It's just that it's like, as you said, it's so workmanlike, and it just feels like here's things we have to do to get to the point. But again, the viewer already knows. Like, we should mention, the episode hasn't explained at this point to the viewer that the cells
are becoming
monkey man.
We don't know that yet.
You're supposed to not know that, but you knew it from scene 2. So it's just like, when is Carl going to catch up?
I also like he steals those photos of the original monkey corpse, and then as he leaves, that detective catches him leaving the office. And we know Carl like folded them and put them in his jacket pocket, or he put them somewhere in his body, and the cop pats him down and doesn't find them. And I was waiting for Kolchak to be like, it's because I thought he was going to pull them out and show the audience where he had hid them and how he got away with them. We never see, we never see where he is.
I thought the exact same thing because he walks down the hallway. I was sure he was going to pick up his hat and have it on the top of his head. I was sure.
It was set up to be such a gag where he because we're like, oh, he's going to find them. He just put them in his jacket and he doesn't. I'm like, all right, well, where did he have them hidden? It's just like, it was in his underpants. We just didn't show you.
I think what it is the cop is just terrible at patting people down.
I guess so. I mean, he didn't know he's looking for photographs, so.
Yeah.
But yes, this is when we finally get back to what I thought was a very refreshing scene in this episode at the INS office with his coworkers. Because he gets there, Vincenzo's ecstatic. They have pictures of a monkey man. They have a story about this oil company that created a monkey man. And Vincenzo's like, get this on the wire right now. Vincenzo's like supporting Kolchak. It's very supportive. He's like, let's get this out there. And as they're sending the story on the wire, the New York office basically cancels the story. They basically send a resend this story over the wire, and Vincenzo's furious. He's like, I can't believe they're like kiboshing this great story. We have all the evidence we need. And it's like such a rare moment on Kolchak for Vincenzo to be like there supporting Kolchak that I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and they also did lean into the implication, which is this oil company or these lobbyists have been able to put pressure on the free press to stop stories they don't want, and the story they don't want is that they have accidentally created monkey people.
And then this is what you were going to get into earlier. Ron comes out and has a great moment with Kolchak too that I'm like, this is also like a great moment on the show, but like apropos to nothing.
Yeah, he basically comes out and what does he say? He's like, oh, they probably they killed the story
because he got
because
a report from another reporter friend of his.
Yeah, and there was a truck or train or some sort of storage vehicle that had like circus animals or large animals,
jungle animals, I believe you said.
Yeah, and the car broke down and they escaped, and so that answers what has been happening because clearly some gorillas or a chimpanzee or something has gotten out, and that answers. So there's not a big conspiracy.
Well, I believe what he says is, Ron says, my reporter friend says the animals that escaped were apes, tigers, and pie-costs.
And what is that?
About 35 cents.
That's right.
That is literally the joke. Is he says that, and then Vincenzo asks, "What's a pie cost?" And he's like 35 cents.
Yeah.
And I think Vincenzo says that's an old Abbott and Costello bit, and Vincenzo storms off, mad that he's been pranked by Updike of all people, and Kolchak and Updike are just laughing their asses off. They're having a great time at the like pranked thing. Like the two of them are having a great time.
Yeah, and you're right. This is one of the nicer moments in this episode and something I wish they did more of because I like them at the office and I think those characters don't get enough screen time. And I was like, oh, what a nice scene for old Ron. He doesn't get many.
It's true. And there's also this weird subplot that like is apropos of nothing, but like Ron and Kolchak are fighting all episode about Kolchak parking in his parking spot.
Yes, that was weird.
It's so weird. And one last thing. I'm going to talk about this office thing because all the stuff in the office is unrelated to anything. But there's one other thing in the office that my partner Melanie noticed as I was watching it. She's like, she's like, what does that say over there? I'm like, what do you mean? And there's this piece of set deck you see for a split second as the camera moves across. But there's a coffee station set up at the INS office, and there's a sign above the coffee station. And so she's like, what did that say? And she paused it. We went back, and it says, "Coffee 10 cents. Everybody pays! ! This means you."
Oh, that's funny.
And I was just like, there's a lot of little details that I really want to spend more time in this office, and we don't get enough time in this office.
I agree, and there's no reason because he could do some investigation at the office, but regardless, he's got to get back to this lab for the 5th time.
I mean, that's just it. We got to get back out there because the monkey man's on loose. It kills again. Some poor woman gets murdered by a monkey man now. And so Kolchak's like, I need to go talk to a biologist. But as we all know, universities are in the pocket of big oil, so no university biologist will talk to him.
Yeah, and was this not a big waste? So they go talk to he's not a professor. What is he?
He's a high school teacher. He's a high school biology teacher.
And so they talk to him, and it's Jamie Farr.
I know, Jamie Farr. I knew you'd be so excited.
Yeah, and I was excited, and I felt what a waste because he got one scene. Is this like he was on lunch during MASH?
He was so good in it, too.
He was good, and it was like, why didn't you have him be one of the larger roles? It was very bizarre.
It's so great because he shows up, and it's like lunchtime at the school, and he's playing a teacher who hates teenagers.
Yeah, it's a funny character.
And he's also like annoyed and jealous of his colleagues in academia because the police are all talking to them about this loose monkey man. So when Kolchak shows up and he's like, I would love to consult you, he's just like, finally, somebody's here to consult me on this monkey man.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting character of like someone who has the education and the experience and the training that they should be the authority, but no one's talking to them. So he's pleased that someone will give him the time he thinks he's due.
Yeah. And, this is the classic person who's going to explain the science behind what's happening. And he just sort of explains that, like, they never say it explicitly, but basically imply that this is some sort of missing link in the, like,
yes.
Which I think was there was a period of time where that was a real monster of the week was the missing link. But, like, that's essentially what's happening here. And then what I really needed explaining, and they bring up in this scene but never explain, is they're just like, but how did the cells we found that were frozen suddenly morph into full-grown monkey men? And Jamie Farr is just like, I don't know. One time scientists found wheat and they could grow it. Maybe that has something to do with it. I'm just like, you guys can't hand wave over these monkey men who in a matter of weeks can grow from cells to full-grown monkey men, can you?
Yeah, because that's not the concern of the show, right? They just wanted to get to monkey men. They're like, wouldn't it be cool if you accidentally dug up an ice core? There's cells in there, and those cells are the beginning, the building blocks to life. All right, anyways, they go real fast now.
Yeah, they make monkey men.
Yeah.
Anyway, the really important piece he gets out of Jamie Farr is that these monkey men would likely live in caves given what time the period they came from.
In an episode of attacking monkey people that are grown rapidly out of cells, the fact that they imply that biologically they are drawn to living in caves is the dumbest thing. It's so stupid.
Well, this whole thing gets insane now because basically Kolchak's like, okay, so if they live in caves, I need to find a cave because I need a picture of these monkey men. And I'm just like, you don't. You have pictures of the monkey
Yes.
men.
Also, this is the same thing. This is the same beat we've seen in similar episodes, which is, what was the one? Was it the vampire? He had to go to an old house because vampires only go to old houses.
None of it makes sense. Like, he has to go to these caves to get this picture, but he already has the story written. He already has pictures of it, so he doesn't need that. But the episode needs to continue, and that's the only reasoning they could think of to give him.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, and like, listen, I love this, and you'll be so shocked how much of this is close to accurate, but he starts monologuing about how he's going to head to the site of the old Chicago Stadium, which is torn down now, but the tunnels are still under the ground there. And these tunnels were where the Manhattan Project first did their atomic testing. Which is partly true in that some of that testing was done in Chicago under the University of Chicago in abandoned racquetball courts, and it like the superconductor, the Fermilab superconductor in the States, is actually near Chicago. So all this stuff is sort of true about the Manhattan Project and all this stuff. The Manhattan Project has literally nothing to do with this monkey man, but we have to listen to a lecture about nuclear things. But it has nothing to do with this monkey man who grows from cells in the Arctic.
It's interesting because when they mentioned that, I thought, oh, they're going to somehow tie this like a la Godzilla to like sort of man's hubris and this these nuclear, disaster that, what we've done to the environment has somehow created this. And it's like, nope, there's just tunnels.
There's just tunnels. He just needs to find tunnels. And for some reason we get a history lesson about a half-true history lesson about the Manhattan Project, apropos to nothing to do with monkey man.
Anyways, it's a way to get Carl down and with a bunch of flares, which I assume are in the back of his car.
I will say this, though. He goes in these tunnels. We've seen him in tunnels. We've seen him in sewers before. I got to give the director of photography some credit here, is they shoot the entire sequence here with, like, these burning red, like, phosphorescent flares, and it looks great.
Yeah. Well, it looks unfortunately, it looks really cool and spooky, but when you see Monkey Man, it sort of kills the feeling because he looks so hokey. It's
just unfortunate. Yeah, well, that's it. It's like, it looks great. It looks like it was really tense sequence. Like the director probably did a great job shooting this thing with like a very unusual lighting source. It's just like, why are they doing it with a monkey man? Why were they talking about the Manhattan Project? Like, it was just a bunch of disparate ideas like jammed together.
Yeah, so he lights the way with like 4 or 5 flares, and almost immediately Monkey Man comes. And Carl's sort of trying to calm him down because I think at one point it comes close and it maybe even touches part of the flare. And he's like, no, it's hot. Like, be careful.
He really tries to reason with the Monkey Man. And the Monkey Man's receptive.
Yeah, at first. And then what spooks Monkey Man is as Carl's trying to, reason and talk to him, the police show up. But it's shot in the weirdest way. It's like they show up. It spooks Monkey Man. Monkey Man then like goes on an attack starts like...
I do love the cops turn the corner and the Monkey Man immediately starts mauling Kolchak.
Yeah, I should mention, we've seen that it has like ripped limbs off people. This thing is ruthless. It's gonna like gnaw on his neck for like 10 minutes and like he's gonna get a couple scratches on his face. But Luke, didn't you think it was weird how they filmed this? Like, it's attacking Carl, and I think what they were going for was his viewpoint of him looking to the police to try to get saved, but it's almost like...
Well, it's all in slow motion. They shoot it all in slow motion as they're getting closer. It's like his...
But it's done in post, which I hate.
At first I thought what it was like his life was ebbing out of him and he needed rescuers to get there quickly, and it just felt like it was taking forever. But later he kind of mentions that they came with tranq guns. So I'm wondering if we're supposed to think he got shot with a tranq gun. So
maybe.
I couldn't tell you, though.
But it looked really weird.
It was all very weird. And then, it cuts and we come back after commercial break and to the conclusion. And it's so funny because you're right. Kolchak's barely hurt. And not only is he barely hurt, these people showed up. They tranked the monkey man. They dragged him out. They're going to do research on him somewhere. And the police just left Kolchak in the tunnels.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's weird about this is, like, he can just write the story. He has all, as you mentioned, he has all the evidence.
Well, and he's just like, and they took my camera again. I'm just like, you already have photos, Carl. You stole them earlier. You have photos of Monkey Man. It's fine.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of how the episode ends.
I will say, like, there are things I liked about it, and I think it was better than the average version of these workman-like episodes because there was a few, like, just I like the lighting, and I liked, like, that they could kill these ones as opposed to they're not unstoppable. But it is just it's a huge mess of an episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll talk about the scores later. I don't know if I agree with you.
Fair enough. I mean, we'll talk about scores later, I suppose. We'll get into it.
Yeah. All right. Episode 14, The Trevi Collection, which is, what a dumb title for an episode.
Oh, I love this title.
Did you?
Yeah.
Do you like that title, The Trevi Collection?
I like The Trevi Collection. Here's the IMDb summary for it.
Tuesday, May 2nd, 1 p.m. Mickey Patrick was a dealer, a snitch, a peddler of information. His clothes were as cheap as his reputation. So when he phoned me with some information to sell, I was surprised that he wanted to meet me in the heart of Chicago's shishi high fashion district. What started out as a mild surprise culminated in stark raving terror.
Kolchak finds a witch in the fashion industry who's maiming and killing her competitors.
I just came up with a better title, Luke.
What?
Witches be bitches.
No, I don't like it. I like Trevi Collection. So this one starts off. It's a little fresher, a little newer. Kolchak's been invited to come to this high fashion district in Chicago by an informant he's worked with before, a gentleman named Mickey Patrick. Can't get that confused.
No.
He's invited him to come to the Trevi Salon during a fashion show of the new Trevi collection. And we'll actually get to see a fashion show kick off at the start where apparently we're told capes are back in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's funny. So what it is he goes in, he's clearly out of place because he's sort of his usual disheveled self. Everyone's all dressed to the nines. He tries to get contact with this guy, Mickey
Patrick.
Yeah, that's the one. But he's thwarted just because the show starts, so he has to kind of sit down and watch this fashion show, which we get, for whatever reason, a much longer extended sequence than you would think we'd get, and while the informant goes off to go do stuff.
I gotta say this, though. I was thinking about this as I was watching this. It's not the first time we've watched a fashion show in a series recently.
What did we watch as well?
Automan also had a fashion show.
Oh, yeah.
It's night and day. Like, the Automan fashion show was so bad, like, so badly executed, as if someone had never seen a fashion show before, whereas this one felt authentic.
I agree with you, because I actually thought at one point, these are actually interesting costumes that they're displaying. Like, one woman had this, like, face covering with this line down the middle.
It's like a veil that covers her whole body.
Yeah, and one woman had, like, almost like an owl-type hood thing, and I was like, oh, these are legitimately could be things that you would see in a fashion show.
Yeah, and it's in a cool location, and it's like a full house for the fashion show. It felt authentic. And I was watching just being like, Automan, what were you doing?
Yeah, but the point of this is that Carl can't get to his informant because the fashion show's on, and he can't disturb it. And so this guy goes around the back to kind of, I guess he's spying for some reason. I don't know why he also is getting more information.
Yes, he's upstairs backstage taking photos of basically the designs, taking photos of he's doing a little industrial espionage.
Mm-hmm.
But as he does, the mannequins in the room start turning to look at him.
It's funny how they do this, because part of the mannequins, they're just mannequins and they've just moved them around, so you see mannequins some move a little bit, but then you have actors also acting like mannequins coming to life, so they try to cut it very quickly so you can't see the difference. And I'll be honest, I didn't notice the actors at first. But it is that funny thing when you see them have to, like, just wheel a mannequin over to kind of look a little threatening, but it's just so incredibly still.
Yeah. And, I mean, these mannequins come to life very quickly, very suddenly, and they throw him out of the fourth-story, like, up floor he's on, like, right through a window. Another glass smash.
You have to go through a window. Yeah. But it's the way he hits the car is, like, it's just shot in a not action way at all. He's sort of just, like, laying on the car, and they're like, thump, he's there.
You could really see the budget constraints. Like,
yes.
they did their best with the mannequins. I think they did a pretty good job with the mannequins. But you could also tell, like, the director really wanted him to smash on top of a car. But they're like, now we can't break a car, so just have him, like, gently lay down on top of a car.
Yeah. And you know what's weird? And did you think this was out of character? I'm still kind of on the fence about it. Carl comes down, sees the guy, and he's like, huh, anyways, that's interesting. And it's just like, he has, like, I'm not saying he should have been heartbroken or, like, wailing or something, because it's someone he sort of knows, but his reaction seems even cold, or I should say more cold than you would think he would have. Am I wrong?
I wasn't as bothered. Like, he's stepping out of the building because he's like, I'm leaving this fashion show. It's not for me. And he sees the man fly out, and then he walks up to the body. He looks down and sees the camera that the man was holding is on the ground. So he scoops that camera up and walks away. So I felt like it was like he was like taking evidence, so he needed to seem inconspicuous.
Well, anyways, he takes these photos, and then he goes to talk to some woman who we find, I guess, is a model that is subcontracted by this company in some way.
Yeah, she's working for the Trevi salon. The police have arrived. They're interviewing people, and, like, you know, Kolchak's trying to get some information. And this one model's Madeleine is her name. She's more than happy to help Kolchak if it means she'll get some publicity in the story. She's like, will I be in the story if I tell you what's happened? I'd love to help you.
Yeah, she gives this, like, all this information about, like, past modeling gigs and stuff she does. The only thing that I really noted was that she mentions that she raised a prize goat one time.
Yeah, 4-H club. She was a winner.
Yeah.
But she does tell Kolchak that, like, the cops are pretty sure that Mickey Patrick was stealing designs from their design house, and that she's like, and he'd been dating one of the models who works with me here at the house, so, like, you know, it's not unusual that he was around, and it seems like it was all a thing. She's just like, hey, why don't you come to this next photo shoot with me, and maybe I can find Mickey Patrick's girlfriend, and, like, we can get, you know, Kolchak goes on a little trip with her to the next fashion shoot, and she's like, I don't see the girlfriend anywhere. But unfortunately for this Madeline character, she gets a little bad news while she's waiting for the photo shoot to start. Apparently the supermodel who's the center of the Trevi campaign and this particular shoot with, I believe it's Vogue International they're shooting for. Mm-hmm. One of the directors of the photo shoot walks up to Madeline. She's like, hey, FYI, the supermodel who's our, like, you know, like the face of the organization, she thinks you and her look too much alike, so you're cut. You're out of here. Yeah. And Kolchak at this point just like, well, this lady's a flake. She's no help to me. Kolchak's really cold to her. He's just like, well, good luck, lady. And as he's walking out of the photo shoot, one of the models has brought a cat with her. A different model's brought her cat with her, and this cat leaps onto the supermodel and starts clawing her face to shreds.
Yeah, and then jumps away. And it's so funny because it's also working with a cat in film. It's like, what a terrible idea, because this cat's not going to do what you want. And they, like, you can see this cat does not want to be there. But they imply that it really attacks. And obviously the importance of this being a model who her most important asset is her face, and that is now being destroyed.
Yes. My favorite part, though, is Kolchak literally walks by as the cat leaps on her face, and he's just like, not my business. He just keeps walking.
He does seem colder in this episode.
He's very interested, I think, in what happened to Mickey, and very uninterested in the modeling world. I think he's looking down on it for the most part. It takes him quite a while to get invested into the modeling subplot here.
And at this point, we get, like, Kolchak calling some guy who's in a phone booth. But I didn't catch, is this the guy who's, like, part of sort of the B plot? Kolchak actually gets a call from another informant, a gentleman named Murray Vernon. Right.
He apparently has the same information that Mickey Patrick was trying to sell to Kolchak, and he's like, I'll sell you the information if Mickey's dead. I've got the information for you. And essentially what he's doing is he's like, hey, I want to sell you basically proof that there's a labor extortion racket being run by the garment union bosses. And this is what Mickey Patrick had, and this Vernon character now is like, listen, this is going on, and, like, we've got all the information, the evidence you need to expose it and, like, get a great story out of it.
By the way, I should say, you mentioned Automan before. This overall plot line of, like, mafia extortion of, like, a fashion industry, this is 100% an Automan plot line.
Yeah, because every Automan plot line was the mob is up to something.
Exactly.
But before they can arrange a pickup for this stuff, Murray Vernon is killed in a drive-by shooting in the phone booth he's using.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, here it's a pretty weak execution of a drive-by shooting, because I think I can't guarantee you, but I think maybe the footage of the drive-by, like the car driving with the gun, was probably stock footage that they intercut with the man in the phone booth. But when he gets shot, like the actor just kind of is like, oh no, and kind of like slumps over. But there's no, like, bullet shots or. And I feel like whatever was happening is mid-season. Must have been like, they're like, you've got a really strict budget on this one, because they really didn't pull out many stops on it.
You know who would have been great in that role? Remember when we watched that Western horror thing?
Oh, yeah.
And there was that, what was the line that guy had, that like thin, weird old guy?
Thank you, Reverend.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend. That would have been great if he was like, oh no, I'm dying. That's really a deep cut for anyone who's listened to previous episodes.
Anyway, Kolchak heads back to his office after the death of this Murray Vernon. He gets grabbed by some Union goons as he's going in, and they're just basically like, hey, we want whatever evidence they have, Kolchak. We know you were talking to them. You better give it to us. And like, there's I think it's supposed to be a comic scene where like Kolchak's trying to negotiate a time frame with the other goon, and then like the third goon's like, listen, let's split the difference. You got 60 hours.
Yeah, they want to give him 24 hours. He wants 72 hours, and they basically come up with a compromise.
Yeah, and the only thing, Kolchak doesn't have no idea what the evidence is. The only thing he has is the photos that old Mickey Patrick was taking, and the only thing on those photos are photos of clothing and mannequins. And he notices in one of the photos the mannequin's head turns, but even that's not like he's just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this information.
It's not even that, Luke. It's dumber. He notices that in the background, the shadows that the mannequins are projecting, they're at different angles. He somehow notices that in the photos. I was like, all right, sure.
It's funny that's what he noticed, because literally, like, in one photo and the next, one of the mannequins' heads is in a different position entirely.
Yeah, but he does mention, he's like, the shadows seem like in different positions. That's funny.
Well, and it's funny. They don't even think it's supernatural. He still thinks this has to do he just assumes the shadows are different because someone was in the room with Mickey.
Right.
And so he's just like, I need to go back. I need to get into this fashion house, this Trevi salon, because I feel like whatever's going on is happening there. So I need more information about it. And it's a very small scene here because he's telling all this to basically Vincenzo. Him and Vincenzo are talking about it, how his life's been threatened. He has 60 hours to get this. And it's actually a really nice scene where Vincenzo's like, don't worry about the fashion stuff. You have to really, like, your life is in danger. You have to find this evidence. And Vincenzo gets, like, as he does, very worked up, and he's screaming at Kolchak, and Kolchak's like, I'm going to the fashion house. Don't worry about it. And it's actually a really sweet scene where Vincenzo's so worried about Kolchak. Like, he's doing it where he's screaming, his heart's racing. He has to, like, hold his, like, he has to check his pulse. Like, he's like, I'm going to give myself a heart attack. Like, Kolchak's going to kill me. But it was one of the nicer character scenes between the two of them, I felt like.
Yeah, it was good because you have that. He cares about him, but he also doesn't articulate that or display it in the greatest way. But you know that these characters care about each other.
Yeah, it was an endearing scene that I'm like, it just goes to show, like, there's a lot going on between these characters that we don't get enough of.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that night, another model is maimed to death.
She's lobstered.
I guess she was going to be the head of the Trevi Collection's new show, and she goes to get in the shower, but the shower mysteriously locks itself, and then the shower head starts spraying her with boiling hot water.
Yeah, which I'll give this episode credit. That's a horrible way to die.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, there's a great shot in the middle of the sequence where we get, like, a POV of the shower nozzle's viewpoint as it's, like, moving around to make sure it hits her as she tries to dodge the water, which I thought was a very funny but, like, cool little shot in the middle of the sequence. Like, little touches to this episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kolchak, he goes to look into her death and visits the head of the Trevi collection, or the Trevi salon, Madame Trevi.
Mm-hmm.
She's pretty, like...
She's standoffish.
Yeah, she's not forthcoming. She's just like, hey, listen, I know what you're saying. You've heard a rumor that model who got scalded was going to leave my show. But the truth is, like, we actually worked out a deal with her, and she was going to stay. So I'm as screwed as ever now that she's dead. Like, I'm not a suspect in this, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kolchak's like, well, I still don't know what's going on. He poses a lawyer, and he goes to try to investigate the apartment she lived at. He's like, I'm a lawyer, and you're in a lot of personal liability issues, landlord. So he gets, like, a look at the house, but there's nothing suspicious at the house. So it's all going very weird for him. He can't get a lead. So he heads back to talk to that Madeline character she's like, oh, good news. I've been promoted to the face of the collection now because everybody's dead.
And she basically says through a conversation that she believes that Madame Trevi is a witch.
Yes.
And that's why all these things are happening, is that because this woman is evil.
Yeah, and Kolchak's obviously skeptical, which is not bad. He's skeptical, but as soon as he leaves the Trevi salon, a car tries to run him down, and when he, like, dodges the car and looks inside, it's a driverless car. A Tesla has tried to kill him.
Yeah, it's more than that, though, Luke. He grabs a pipe, and when the car comes at him, he, like, throws it like he's a Spartan, and it goes through the window and would have essentially, I guess, theoretically speared the person driving. But when the car stops, he opens the door and there's no one being driving. Yeah, and yes, it's a Tesla.
But he looks up to the Trevi salon, and he sees Madame Trevi looking out a window at him, watching the whole scene. He's just like, that witch.
Yeah, she's just like, oh, well, that didn't work out.
So Kolchak goes to a place I think we may have seen before. It appears to be some sort of occult club. And do you remember the time he went to a UFO conference where people were talking about their abductions?
Yeah, I think this was the same thing.
I think so too. I wish they'd like seed this a little better. If this is going to be a place he's going to go to, it's kind of interesting. But he goes here, like the last time he was here, I believe. There's a man giving a lecture about a new novel. Not a novel. He's written a book on witchcraft, and he's sort of talking about witchcraft. And Kolchak's in the audience asking him questions about witchcraft.
Yeah, and then he also buys the guy's book so that he can get up to the guy while the guy's signing to ask more questions. And the guy's sort of like, kind of is helpful, but also not as helpful as Kolchak wants. So Kolchak goes...
Kolchak's questions aren't very helpful either. He's just like, he inquires if there's a witch test.
That's right.
The answer is yes, they can't be drowned. Bad test.
Yeah.
You kill a lot of people to prove that one. And then he asks, is there a way to take away a witch's power? And he's like, of course. You just have to publicly accuse them of witchcraft. That is how the people of Salem weakened the witches so they could burn them to death.
Yeah.
I was like, oof, you guys.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what happened, but sure. But
just a real tough one.
Yeah. But he goes to the sort of like bulletin board.
Yeah, there's an
sorts.
occult community bulletin board.
Yeah. So he's kind of looking through that, and this lady comes by, and she's like, hey, if you're actually looking for real information, this one over here, and she points to something, and she's like, this is where you can get some actual info, and so look into that. So he's like, oh, great. So he does.
Well, she's just like, most of the covens who post on this board, they're mostly bullshit. But this one right here, it saved my marriage.
Yeah, I know. She said that, and it's like, oh, I wonder how that happened. No, Luke, you assume it's orgy, right?
Oh, what's that?
An orgy? Assume that's how it has saved her marriage?
Oh, you think that's what it was? I assumed it was just a couple ceremony.
Via orgy.
Yeah, that's how covens do it.
But anyways, he gets the information. He shows up to this kind of spooky Victorian home.
Yeah, best scene of the episode.
He's greeted at the door by like a hooded man who's just like, you can come in, but I need a donation.
No. He comes in and Kolchak says, how much? And the guy's like, it's free. And Kolchak puts his wallet away. And he's just like, but we would like a nominal donation would be accepted. And he holds out a bowl. So Kolchak puts some money in the bowl. And the man in the hood says, not that nominal.
That's right.
A very cute, very funny scene.
Yeah. So he gets in, and almost immediately he sort of like walks in on, I guess, the beginnings of a ceremony. There's a lot of people with the hoods on, the sort of thing you've seen a million times there. That like,
yeah, they're getting ready to sacrifice a goat.
Yeah, that very 1970s culty thing we've seen.
But before
countless times.
But before they can go through with the big goat sacrifice, the beginning of the ritual, it's all stopped by Griselda. Griselda says stop.
That's right, and she's like, we have to stop the ceremony because someone has essentially been. What did she say?
She said someone is under the spell of a black witch. Someone here is under the spell of a black witch. And like the head of the coven turns to Kolchak and says, "Are you under the spell of a black witch?" And my favorite Kolchak reaction of all time is that cuts to Kolchak. He's like, "I don't know." Like he's so afraid, and he says it in the most like sad way. He's like, "I don't know. Am I under the spell of a black witch?"
Yeah. So they're basically like, "You have to go. You can't be part of the ceremony." And then they what do they say?
Griselda says, "No, I'll help you."
Yeah, they're like, "We'll help you. I'll write a message to you that's going to help you." And what the message says, and it's written backwards, and they're like, you have to hold it to a mirror. I was like, hey, Kolchak, you couldn't figure that out? And what the message says is, oak chest, mojo bags, brass bells, copper thread. And from that, he basically is implied that there is a oak chest somewhere, seemingly with Miss Trevi, Madame Trevi, that contains these items, and these items, they're like, what would you call it? Like,
I believe they call them scrolls and charms.
Right. So they're somehow connected with these evil...
Yeah, I mean, these witches do try to help him out. They're like, there'll be an oak chest. If you go in there, it's going to have her powers. Get yourself a mojo bag. That'll help ward off the witches. And they sort of send him on his way. They're like, now get out of here. You've cursed. You've doomed us all. And like, as they say that, like a pen starts floating around. They're like, the evil black witch has found us. There's a pen floating in the air.
Yeah, and so Kolchak runs out, and at this point,
Hold on. Kolchak runs out. Before he leaves, he stops and gives them a tip. He leaves a little extra
does
money in
he?
that tip jar.
anyways, he runs out, and they take off their hoods, and the first person you see is the lady that was at the book signing. So you're like, oh, something sketchy here. And she was the lady who helped him to write stuff down. And then someone else pulls off the hood, and it's Madeline, the model we've seen. And she gives, which I will argue, is the most insane laugh I have ever seen in any television show or movie I have ever. It's insane. And it goes on for like 15 seconds. And to say she is acting over the top does not do it justice. I've never seen anything like it.
It's very good because he runs out and they all start laughing because they pulled one over on him and they push it on her and she is just laughing so hard, so maniacally. I'm just like, it's not that funny, lady. Calm down.
Yeah, like it's the funniest thing that anyone has ever heard ever.
Yeah. At any rate, Kolchak then heads straight to the Treves salon, to Madame Treves' office, breaks in, finds the oak chest full of charms and scrolls, tosses them into a garbage can, and starts burning them. And as soon as he does, Madame Treves rushes in and is like freaking out. She's like, what have you done? Madeline's the real witch. She had like a deal on the side with her to help her like fashion line do well, but she was using the scrolls and charms to keep Madeline in check, basically. And now that Kolchak's burnt them, that's all out the window. And as if to evidence that, she immediately starts choking to death.
Yeah, and I actually say, you as a viewer got a sense earlier on that Madeline probably was the villain, but they had you unsure enough that there still was a chance you weren't sure who the villain was going to be. And I think even in world, it was a good plan to fool Kolchak into destroying the only defense that would stop this witch. And I was like, oh, that's actually good. It's something that was lacking in the last episode, was that little bit of a turn.
Yeah, it's a nice little bit because like Madame Treves gets rushed to the hospital and she's like, the doctor's like, we don't know if she's going to make it through the night. So whatever's crushing her larynx, we can't figure it out. Mm-hmm. Kolchak puts together a mojo bag per the witch's instructions, which is very funny. They actually gave him some useful instructions as well.
Yeah.
But essentially this bag will ward off witches as long as he walks around with it. And also, did you notice this like right near the end here as he's putting his mojo bag? He's explaining this all at work. He's just like, I made a mojo bag. And then out of nowhere, he's just like, and also, as we all know, witches hate the sound of smashing glass. And I'm just like, pardon me?
Oh, I don't even remember him saying that.
Yeah, he says like, witches hate the sound, because later he'll use that to ward off the witches. But I'm just like, this is such weird information to drop on us very abrupt. You just knew they needed it later and they didn't know where to put it.
Right. Maybe he read it in that book.
Yeah, maybe. And Madame Treves in her hospital bed whispers to him that he needs to go to her office and find a rag doll with hair tied around the throat. That's the only way to save her. Somewhere in that salon is going to be a rag doll with hair tied around her throat. Mm-hmm. So Kolchak heads over there. He finds the doll. He cuts the hair off and saves Madame Treves back at the hospital. But while he's doing that, the mannequins have come to life and managed to sneak up on him and knock that old mojo bag out of his hand, so he's defenseless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is when Madeline appears and basically offers Kolchak a deal. She's like, you let me become rich and famous, which is my big dream, become rich and famous, and I will make you an important man. And sort of to drive that home, she's just like, listen, I'm a witch. I'm going to clairvoyant right now. I'm going to tell you exactly where the evidence that the mafia goons are trying to get from you is. It's hidden away in someone's house in this box. So like, there you go. I already helped you once. I can do that more. So just let me be this crazy witch in the fashion industry, please.
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, maybe I will join you. And she's like, Carl, I can essentially read your mind. I know you're not going to do it, so why are you even pretending?
Well, it's funny. It's like the Deal with the Devil episode 2, where it's just like, can I have a day to think about it? And I believe she says she knows when he's lying because she's a witch. And Kolchak's response is like, just like my mom.
So they get into like, he starts breaking mirrors.
He starts smashing the mirrors because witches hate the sound of smashing glass.
Yeah. And she's like, starts screaming again, like way over the top. She sort of sticks the mannequin on him, and then he grabs her. And at first I didn't know why. I was like, there's just a big barrel of water. He like jams her head under the water to try to drown her. But what you realize is, I guess it's a container of dye for clothing. It
wasn't until I did my notes that I understood that. I was also like, weird, there's a barrel of water here. Mm-hmm. But you're right. He shoves her face in, and he's like, it's a visceral scene because he's drowning a woman screaming, yes, drown witch.
Yeah, and it's also a scene where I was kind of hoping the police would come in because this happened a few times in the episode where Carl sort of has to talk his way out of just killing someone. Like in the episode where it was like, I think it was like type the zombie type thing and he had to like stab it. And it's like, how do you talk your way out of this?
Yeah, it was a very uncomfortable to watch scene because it was so effectively as he was watching him drown a woman. But you're right. I didn't notice I was doing my notes, so I couldn't figure it out. He steps away from the barrel and she pulls her head out of the barrel and she is completely blue.
Yeah.
And Kolchak's arms are completely blue. And it wasn't until I was doing my notes that I realized, it's supposed to be a barrel of blue dye. I was so confused as to why she turned blue.
Yeah, but there's no reason for it. It's just like they needed to drown her and they were like, well, there wouldn't be water. There
wouldn't be a barrel of water. There'll be a barrel of blue dye.
Yeah, that they just dip clothing in. So there you go.
At any rate, Kolchak then takes off. He starts running and he runs out of the building and Madeline's chasing him with a pair of scissors. And they get outside of the Trave salon and apparently all you need to publicly accuse a witch of witchcraft is just like 4 people who happen to be walking by at like 8 o'clock at night on their way to dinner.
Yeah, because this was weird. He essentially starts like saying things better, like yelling at her, and then she just starts dying.
Yeah, she runs out and just like 2 people are walking by and Kolchak's like, hey, you 2, she's a witch. I'm publicly accusing her of witchcraft. And she's just like, oh no, I'm in such pain. And she like collapses on the ground. And I'm just like, what? And it's so funny. She collapses on the ground, and then Kolchak just leans against the car next to him, and he's just like, gotcha.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
what?
It's such an anticlimactic way, and it's an anticlimactic way to finish an episode. But it's a issue that this show has had, which is the last couple minutes you sort of have to have him go mano a mano against someone, but they're trying to come up with new ways to do it, and this is not a he's probably physically stronger than Madeline, so they're like, I don't know, he calls her names.
And anyway, it cuts to the classic denouement where he's dictating the story into his microphone.
Yeah.
And this denouement, I love it when they're as wild as this. He's just like, anyway, Madeline was committed to an insane asylum. Also, she contracted a medieval pox which scarred up her face, so I guess she's not pretty anymore. And it's like, what? Sorry, what?
Yeah, I know. They had to add that in. It's like, if you thought she was going to get out, she's not, because she ugly now.
She got medieval pox somehow.
Yeah, that's right.
And then also, don't worry, Kolchak got the evidence about the garment union extortion ring and wrote a groundbreaking piece about it. He's going to be quite celebrated.
Yeah, unrelated. Well, they say he sent Miss Emily to go get it.
and that wraps up the witch episode.
Yeah, another I would say for Kolchak, maybe 2 kind of middling episodes.
I think they were much better than last week's episodes.
Do you think so?
Oh yeah, last week's episodes I thought were really, really like bottom of the barrel, and these ones at least were fun.
I'll be honest, I don't even remember what last week's were. Don't even remember.
Swastikas everywhere.
Oh right, that's right.
It was awful.
By the way, I found a short story that was based on that episode about a scene in between. Anyway.
And I don't even remember what the other one was. It's so forgettable.
All right. Well, why don't we review these and see how, or rate them? I guess we've just reviewed them. Rate them and see where we're at.
Sure. So there's Primal Screams, our first one.
I did not like this episode. As I mentioned, I thought it was boring, and if we were picking the top episodes, this would not be in them. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 10.
4.5.
Yeah, I really found it boring.
I think it's in that genre we've talked about where they've done it a few times and it's like a little wheel grinding, like I don't know. It's not their strongest stuff for sure. I had a lot more fun. I loved watching people get thrown through windows. I liked that the monster got killed midway through and there was just another monster just constantly spawning. I liked the shot. I thought it was very effective, the stuff at the end in the tunnels. Like there was stuff I liked about it in an episode that was very workmanlike. There at least were some touches that felt okay. And I had fun. I had fun with this one. Way more fun than I had last week. So I'm going to go 6.5.
Wow. I think we have opposite reviews from those last ones.
And then the Trevi collection.
Yeah, I thought this was a little bit better episode. Not great, but a little bit better. It had some more moments, and I like that there was a couple weird turns and stuff. So I'm going to give this one, still not great. Let's give it a 5.5.
5.5. I think Trevi collection was really well directed. Like, that mannequin stuff should have been the hokiest stuff on earth, and they did a great job making it weird and creepy. A lot of the whole scene when they go to the coven was both very funny and very weird, and like just well executed all around. Like I actually was just like really impressed by this episode. I thought it was very well directed. What could have been, it could have been easily as hokey as Monkey Man. But someone came in with a little bit of work and effort and tried to like elevate the material, and I thought it really worked. By the way, the director of that episode, a gentleman named Don Wise, has directed 2 other things we've watched before.
Oh yeah,
Planet of the Apes and Beyond Westworld.
Oh okay.
One well before this and one well after this.
I would agree with all your points, by the way. I think it's going to end up being a kind of forgettable episode. Like, could you make it a 6? I'm like, yeah, maybe. I'm just like, I don't know. At this point in this season, though, I had a lot of
fun with these 2, and I thought this one was like, it felt fresher than a lot of the other ones. I liked that it was like that one episode. I can't remember which one it was, but it was like Kolchak was on a story, and that story was this like trying to figure out what had happened to Mickey Patrick, which became a thing about this extortion ring. But what was happening in the background was the real story that he didn't come into until late in the... I felt it was a lot more interesting and more fun. I'm going to go 7.5.
Wow, that high, huh?
I think it's one of the better episodes of Kolchak.
I don't agree.
What's better?
I don't know. That one with the alien, that was a better episode.
What did you give that one?
I don't know, probably like a 3. It's, you know what it is? You have different feelings at different times. Like, I always find it's interesting when we look back at these and what sort of sticks with you. It may not always be the episodes that you liked as much at the time. Oh, I like the episode where the senator became a dog.
Oh yes, the devil. That's a very good episode.
Yeah. But I just, for whatever reason, and again, I don't think this is a bad episode. It's just that we're at episode 14 and they should be better at this point. Don't you think?
I think this is good. I think this is actually really good for them. I actually think this is a solid episode. I think it falls a little flat at the end with the public accusation, but I still think overall it's like I was surprised. I was very impressed.
Well, there we have it.
Well, that about wraps it up. So we'll be back with more Kolchak sometime. I don't know if it's next week or not. I can't remember what we're doing anymore.
Yeah.
But
there'll be more.
In the meantime, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of us about anything. And on Instagram and Twitter, we're going to have some clips from these episodes. There's lots of good clips in these episodes. People flying through windows, people getting mannequins attacked. It's like,
we have to have that hysterical laughter.
Oh, that laugh? Oh, that laugh's there for sure. But yes, those are all on Instagram and Twitter at continuumdrag's the handle there. And I guess that about wraps it up. So, listener, thank you for joining us. And Jordan, I will see you next week.
See you then. Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rex Seidler. Produced by Jordan Dullock and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.